Alrighty, YouTube, Niner Empire, what is going down? Welcome back to another video. So, NFL insider Michael Silver recently wrote an article for The Athletic, and he kind of detailed a noticeable shift in philosophy within the 49ers organization. And it's not really a drastic overhaul, it's more of, a kind of like a course of correction. But the changes signal an evolving approach to roster management. Uh, you know, Michael Silver did make one thing clear, that GM John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan remain aligned on what needs to be done. And even though they're coming off of a disappointing 6-11 season, Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch, their seats are not hot at all. They're not even lukewarm. Um, so, you know, I think this obviously all is self-inflicted salary cap constraints. Um, it's the result of multiple aggressive but ultimately unsuccessful championship runs. And obviously, at some point in time, when you are dishing out massive contracts to players and it's coming with a failure to win Super Bowls, at some point in time, the owner's going to kind of step in and be like, look, I'm writing all these checks, but getting nothing but unsuccessful championship runs in return. So we need to figure out what to do to get rid of some of these massive contracts and kind of take a step back and really be smarter about giving out some of these massive contracts. Um, and obviously, you know, the Niners still have full confidence in, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, but the priority is to ensure, according to Michael Silver, that Shanahan remains focused on game planning and being a head coach rather than, you know, getting involved in potentially distracting aspects of football operations like the contract negotiations. Um, Number one, in 2022, Debo's coming off of that record-breaking performance of a season. 1,770 yard, 14 touchdown season that Debo had in 21. But in the offseason of 22, Debo requests a trade. He has a contract dispute and he requests a trade. The 49ers eventually, to summarize it, work out a deal to secure a lucrative deal to keep him. They secure a lucrative contract to keep him around. But that was potentially influenced by Kyle Shanahan's close relationship to Debo Samuel. And in hindsight, it wasn't the best long-term move for the 49ers. 3 years later, with, a clear decline in production from Debo, the 49ers trade him. Just last week, they traded him to the Washington Commanders, leaving the Niners with nothing more than a fifth-round pick and massive dead cap hits. Last year, a similar situation unfolds with their other wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk. He requests a trade. It's another high-emotion standoff that nearly leads to a trade. But Shanahan likely insisted that Brandon Ayuk was crucial to the offense, instead leading to another hefty contract, one that is being reported that the team regrets badly. They give Brandon Ayuk $30 million a year. He blows out his knee with a lot of structural damage to the knee. And there are now reports coming out that, there were people within the organization that were never thrilled about giving Brandon Ayuk the money. And clearly, I think it's never going to be, unraveled. But there's a lot of people, probably including Kyle, that regret giving Brandon Ayuk that massive contract. But again, personal ties may have played a role in the outcome of Brandon Ayuk securing that massive deal. So with that being said, it makes sense why Jed York would prefer Kyle to take a step back and just focus strictly on coaching the team and doing what he does best, scheming it up and things of that nature. And I'm sure Jed York would probably prefer him to do that rather than to worry about making sure so many of his highest profile players within the roster make a massive contract and get paid. And now this offseason, the Niners are facing another high-stakes negotiation with Brock Purdy. They got to pay their franchise quarterback. They love Purdy. They've been adamant on keeping Purdy around and paying him and making him their franchise quarterback. But this contract will likely make Debo and Ayuk's deals seem like pale in comparison. Purdy's expected to become one of the NFL's highest paid players in the league. And again, the Niners love him. They know they can win with him. He's clearly their future quarterback. But I think they also understand that paying top dollar for Brock Purdy is also going to limit cap flexibility and force other tough roster decisions. So Mike Silver writes, a deal should be doable, but it's easy to see how things could get messy. And this is, again, talking about the Brock Purdy situation. So he says that the 49ers can freely proclaim to the world that Purdy remains under contract. He's due to earn $5.2 million in 2025 and could theoretically be franchised in each of the following 2 seasons. Conversely, Purdy's camp can float the possibility of a holdout, something that could potentially hijack the 2025 offseason in a manner that would make last year's Ayuk saga look like a warm-up act. Now, I don't think there's any chance in hell that Purdy holds out. He's not the type of player. He's been adamant on getting a contract done very soon. It may not pan out that way. It could take more time, but Purdy's not going to hold out. There's no doubt in my mind that that's not going to happen. Or there's no doubt in my mind that that's there's zero chance in that happening. But either way, he's just kind of, hinting at it. Like it could happen, right? Like there is a small chance in this universe that could happen. I don't think that's anywhere in the realm of possibilities. That's not going to happen. I think they're eventually going to come to terms on a deal, but he's just highlighting the fact that there is a slight chance that it could happen. And if it did, it would make the Ayuk situation in 2024's offseason and Debo's situation in the offseason of 2022 look minuscule. Because this is a quarterback. This is one of your most important players. But obviously, again, neither side wants that to be the outcome of the situation for a holdout. And obviously, the 49ers are definitely seemingly taking a more cautious approach to the Purdy situation. But after all, there are still other offseason matters to attend to. Dre Greenlaw. Some of the free agency additions that they're going to want to make. And money will be needed to ensure that what happened last year of going 6-11 was an outlier and that it's not going to be the beginning of a downward trend. And again, I've been adamant about this for multiple weeks. This is the most important offseason that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are going to have to endure with their time with the Niners. It's by far the most important and, the most important and the most, the biggest offseason that Kyle and John Lynch have had since, joining the 49ers as the GM and as the head coach. And again, with it being a pivotal offseason, Jed York may feel that maintaining the status quo is no longer an option. Giving out these massive contracts and going all in, to try to get back to the Super Bowl is no longer an option. They have to take a step back. John Lynch hinted at this at the Combine as well. He said, we kind of have to take a step back and not be too aggressive like we've been in the past. So he's hinting at what is transpiring within the 49ers organization. There is no more going all in, right? There's still going to be aggressive. They're still going to try to make the team better in every aspect possible. But in terms of going all in and being big spenders, those days I think are over. I think the Niners are going to now focus on drafting well and developing that young talent that they're drafting while also signing some key guys in free agency, but also not, being this team that is throwing out massive contracts to 30-year-old defensive tackles like Javon Hargrave and to players like Brandon Ayuk who don't necessarily fit the culture of the team. Giving big contracts to guys that are coming off injuries or that have injury history. There's definitely a change of philosophy that's going to be happening. John Lynch has hinted at it. Reports are coming out. There are clearly multiple contracts like Javon Hargrave, like Brandon Ayuk, in which the 49ers regret. And there's past contracts that players that aren't even on the team that they regret. Dee Ford's contract was massive. Quan Alexander's contract was pretty big. Like, this has been a thing that the 49ers have always done. They've always paid these guys big-time money to come play for them, and a lot of these players never live up to the hype. And I think Jed York is kind of starting to put pressure on John Lynch and Shanahan in terms of like, look, man, like, I'm done writing checks if we're not getting Super Bowls in return. We need to be more cautious about money. We need to develop younger talent. We need to be better at drafting talent. And we need to do it like the Philadelphia Eagles done it just this past season, where they really developed a lot of their draft picks, and they weren't necessarily too big of spenders in free agency. Their entire defense was basically draft picks. Yeah, they had a couple guys here or there that they signed, but they had a decently cheap defense, but they developed talent and they drafted well, and it came with a Super Bowl. So it's not like the 49ers aren't going to be, signing and extending homegrown talent and players that they like. The fact of the matter is the players have to live up to these contracts, and they can't, it can't be a situation where, like Brandon Ayuk, where, yeah, he had a phenomenal 2023 season, but he was never worth $30 million a year. It can't be a situation where they're like, you know what, screw it. We don't want to lose this player, so we're going to give him whatever the hell he wants. That's where the 49ers are hurting themselves at. They're hurting themselves in signing guys like Javon Hargrave, who are in their 30s, who have injury history. Signing these guys to big-time money, and they're dealing with injuries, and they're never living up to the hype of their contract. So it's just about being more cautious, but also developing young talent and drafting well, and not going all out in free agency and signing all these players to massive contracts. So it's definitely not a drastic overhaul that's going to be taking place, but it's a course correction. It's more of a course correction that I think Jed York has kind of been, hinting at for a long time. And again, it doesn't mean that these guys are on the hot seats. It just means that, Kyle Shanahan's going to be taking a step back, seemingly, and focusing more on being the head coach and letting Parag Marathe and John Lynch kind of handle the contract situations. Because, again, last offseason, John Lynch was about to trade Brandon Ayuk. But then Kyle Shanahan runs upstairs to his office and is like, no, we can't trade him. Don't trade him. We have to sign him. So John Lynch accommodates Kyle Shanahan. John and Parag accommodate Shanahan. They pay him $30 million a year, all for him to have a disappointing 2024 season, and then he tears his ACL. Disappointing first half, basically, or first month and a half of the 2024 season. And then he goes, and we play the Chiefs, and he blows out his knee, and now that contract looks terrible. So it seems like the pressure's really on Kyle Shanahan more than anybody. But I think, obviously, there's pressure on John Lynch, too, because he's kind of been accommodating Kyle on these contracts. So Jed York seemingly is reportedly now kind of stepping in and being like, look, guys, I'm not saying we have to completely overhaul what we do, but let's just make a course of correction that makes more sense for the long haul, and let's try to cut back on some of these big-time contracts. That's why they're getting rid of guys like Javon Hargrave. It's why they're listening to trade offers on Brandon Ayuk. They want to get rid of some of these contracts and reset, and really kind of change the philosophy, and tweak the philosophy within the Niners organization and within their spending moves and things like that. So And this makes sense to me. Obviously, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but I think that's like the biggest thing is to take a step back, be more smarter about signing guys, but more so draft better and develop young talent. So we'll see what happens. It's a pivotal offseason for the Niners. And, obviously it seems like Jed York is no longer wanting to take the approach that they've been taking with signing guys in free agency and working out some of these contracts. And I don't blame them because I do think that's the smartest thing to do. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think of this in the comments down below. I know this was kind of a longer video, but I kind of wanted to just give you guys insight of what could potentially be happening within the Niners organization moving forward. And again, this is all coming from a very tight-end source within the 49ers organization, Mike Silver of The Athletic. So again, he's detailing a noticeable shift in philosophy within the Niners organization. Again, not a drastic overhaul, but a course of correction. Let me know what you guys think of this in the comments down below. As always, go